Coogs House. The saying goes, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't really have one. So what's it mean when you say you're going to intentionally play two?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation, but don't say, tell us in the comments down below if you'd rather get in the ocean or the pool. I think people tend to be kind of one or the other on that one. Anyway, if you're an ocean person or a pool person, tell us down below. This show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book with a fun offer to talk about later. But we got a lot to get into today. I want to talk some about conference realignment because I do think that tangentially tells us something about Houston or about being in the Big 12, or frankly about where Houston could have been had they not been in the Big 12. I want to talk about what's been frustrating about the Houston offense on third down, and how, frankly, I've noticed something that might make it not as bad. I don't know. We'll talk more about that when we get there. But we've got to spend some time first talking about the viral Willie Fritz moment from his press conference on Monday, which was the comment that Houston is going to play two different quarterbacks at the same time, or in the course of the game, I should say, on Saturday against Iowa State. Now, the quote initially said that Donovan, and when asked about the starting quarterback position, I believe it was Duarte asked the question. The quote was, Donovan's going to start and will play both quarterbacks in the game. This comment, I think, was mostly raised when after the game Saturday, when Donovan Smith was benched mid-third quarter. Fritz was asked in a post-game. I think he wasn't even completely off the field. It didn't look like at the time. He might have been outside the locker room in the tunnel or something, but very fresh to the game. And in a little bit of a more emotional moment, he did say something to the effect of like, hey, we're going to, reevaluate and figure it out. And everyone kind of took that and ran with it, that the evaluation had been made because of Donovan Smith's benching mid-game. The score was kind of crazy out of hand at that point and what have you, but that's the way those kind of things go. But I want to actually focus on what Fritz said after that initial Donovan's going to start and we'll play both quarterbacks in the game, because I think that's where we figure out more about what the situation is. Fritz followed that up by saying they both have done some good things. It might be crystal clear to some people, but to me, I've seen some good things and some things not so good. We're going to play both these guys, and we're going to give them both opportunities to show us, what they can do. We've got to play better of the other 10 guys. That's a big part. Quarterbacks get too much credit when things go well, and they get too much blame when things don't go well. So the whole offense has got to play better. And amen to that. The offense does have to play better. But I think what's interesting there is that some of the mistakes we're seeing, from their coaching perspective, schematically, in terms of what's supposed to be happening or whatever, I think really might not be like I said, the interception on the first drive of the game. I think a receivers coach is saying that Boogie Johnson's got to run a different route or angle that route differently or something. And maybe Fritz gives more credence that. I still don't think he was open, but I think that's fair. I want to stress a couple things that people are running with online that he did not say. Willie Fritz did not say they're going to split time. This is not a 1-to-1 split or any sort of an even keel thing. There was no actual inference or reference to anything like that in Willie Fritz's presser, right? He just said that both would play. That's all he said. And for what it's worth, he said they're going to the UNLV game as well. Zeon Smith got a little banged up. He didn't play in the Oklahoma game. We've seen both quarterbacks. Admittedly, the Rice game was a little bit of a blowout for Houston's favor. But we've seen both quarterbacks in each game besides the Oklahoma game for some stretch, right? He also did not say this is a competition. He did not say this is like an open for business kind of thing. He made no inference or reference to that being the situation either, right? If anything, he openly admitted that catching him after the game. It was a little, everyone's a little bit heated right after the game. Coach talked about the 24-hour rule and don't make any rash decisions for 24 hours or any irrational decisions for 24 hours. Let everything calm down. That's a very common coach speak thing amongst coaches with one another. Obviously, catching someone right off the field takes away from that. As far as other offense schematics go, we talked about how the perimeter was not open. The 3-3-5 defense kind of cut that off, and that had been kind of things that were successful with an offense against Rice, against Oklahoma, etc. There are moments where Fritz talks where I don't think he's very happy with bar-based play calling. He has never said anything directly that blunt about it. But something like that, if you're in coaching circles, like, okay, well, if we're playing a 3-3-5 this week, we got to kind of find ways to maneuver either inside of that and not hit the perimeter or some way to go around and outside on top of that. And I think that, that doesn't take a whole lot. But playing two quarterbacks feels like they're going to get kind of towards where we thought they were going to be this summer. And that as Donovan's going to play the majority of the traditional quarterback snaps, you're going to see a Zeon package of plays. When he first came into the game against Cincinnati, it felt more like that in the first half. Quarterback sweeps, quarterback read options, maybe play action pass kind of stuff. Even after he came in and played full-time quarterback in the third quarter, Zeon only attempted 5 passes. I believe my stat here and taking notes on the second watch on Sunday show that he had 8 dropbacks, but only 5 passes, meaning that he took off and scrambled on a couple. For what it's worth, both Donovan and Zeon had more time to throw on Saturday against Cincinnati than they had in any game thus far this season. As far as the time to throw stat goes, they almost got to the point where you kind of feel like they're taking too long to throw, right? So they kind of got through that end of the statistic there. And that, credit to Cincinnati and the coverage downfield and all that, but they also need to make a play. And with this idea of a wild Zeon kind of package, I need to see. So we saw Zeon Chris at Louisiana Lafayette, not Louisiana Lafayette. We saw Zeon really air it out. The guy's got a cannon for an arm. I think he threw the only ball in college football last year. I believe the stat was he threw the only ball in college football last year that went a certain distance. I believe the stat was 60 yards, that he was the only guy that could get the ball in the air for 60 yards in a game last season. We know he's got that kind of stuff. I don't know how you run a play action that opens up something deep like that. I know Boogie's got wheels. I know Jonah Wilson's got wheels. And so maybe that's the move. But I do think to make the wild Zeon work or to really play him as a quarterback, there needs to be more than 8 dropbacks in a game for the guy. And frankly, in those 8 dropbacks, he needs to throw it more than 5 times. I understand he's an elusive runner, and I think that the reason we're entertaining this and we're going down this path is probably because Fritz understands that Zeon Chris is a better runner in the year 2024 at this point than Donovan. Regardless of what Donovan's past was like, in the present tense, Zeon's the better runner. That's where they're going. The other thing I'll say is that with these sharing of the responsibilities, everything has been about 2 quarterbacks, right? OELA, I think people are really, there's a group of fans that seem rabid to talk about how he needs the job. And we talked in one of Monday's episodes about how there's a lot of revisionist history about some of this stuff, right? He had the big pass to Snead against Sam Houston State in 2023. The ball went like 6 or 7 yards past the line of scrimmage, and Snead took off with it against Sam Houston State in their first year in FBS, right? It was a quick slant, right? That people, the decision making super quick. Like, yeah, it's also a quick slant against a team that Houston was blowing out. People are getting really excited about the 7 for 8 in the final drive against UNLV, but the receiving core on the field for that drive for Houston was a lot of starters. And I guess Rashawn Sanford was not the starter in that game, but he would become the starter very quickly, caught in a big ball in that series as well. And Joseph Manjack, the most veteran receiver in the entire roster, he catches the touchdown pass. And so again, that's great. He's meshing with veteran guys. They're playing UNLV's backups. The closest DB to man jack on the touchdown was a third string guy, right? And so I think there's a lot of popularity with the backup quarterback and the backups even more popular right now. But on the whole, I think that's just being optimistic. I think what we're seeing here is this is really the situation right now. Donovan Smith has not played as well as he did last year. He just hasn't. That doesn't inherently mean that there is a better option on the roster. That's not how things work. And I think it's interesting that that's where we're back to on Monday after, going to presser for Monday's meetings and whatever and talking about getting ready for Iowa State is that we will play both, it looks like, both being two, and that we're looking at kind of something similar to what we thought we were going to get a lot more this season. We threw it off a little bit with Chris getting dinged up. Oklahoma then not having Chris throws it off a little bit. But I think we're going to see more of that kind of situation moving forward. Now, I want to talk about running the ball a little bit on third down and conference realignment as well throughout the rest of the episode. Before we get too far, you'll notice I mentioned I have a lot of jobs to do. I have teaching and coaching and podcasting every day because I like talking about the Cougs. Who would? Who wouldn't these days, right? Whenever I need energy, I need to tackle a to-do list. 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or a bunch of DIY projects to practice to do at home, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. And if you're like me, you always have a large list of projects around the house. We're now in a house. We got projects to do here. I gotta fix a dishwasher at some point. We can talk on Twitter about that one. But whenever I need energy to do those things, I get 5-Hour Energy with zero sugar and convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. I like extra strength grape. I know there's a lot of people out there like different berries, different watermelons, tropical bursts, etc. Go check out the flavors for yourself. If you go to 5-Hour Energy, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. Get some 5-Hour Energy products today. You can use promo code locked on CFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th. Got a few more days left. September 30th, and one order and cannot be used on other promotions. Does not work on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use locked on CFB as your promo code today. All right, so I mentioned that I was studying some stuff and kind of going back, trying to figure out what's going on in this game. And one thing that has irked me about Barbe as an offensive play caller, and this is a guy that is a very run-heavy guy. Myself, I called run plays for a high school offense for about 9 years. And one thing I really hated was when it got to be like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, because analytics would tell you on 3rd and 3 or worse or longer, you got to pass the football. That is because you can guarantee that the guy catching is more than 3 yards downfield, and that changes the numbers up entirely, right? That's the goal. Whereas a run play, 3 yards is you're talking about falling forward and getting a little bit of certain push, and they're going to blow the box up and those kinds of things. Numbers would tell you 3rd and 3 is a passing down technically, but teams feel fairly certain that based on their personnel, they're going to be better at one thing or the other. Most teams will pass on 3rd and 4. Almost every team in America passes on 3rd and 5 unless they run some sort of a draw type of play. Houston had 14 third downs. So that right. Houston had 14 third downs against Cincinnati over the weekend. They ran it 8 times. They had a fumble in one of those 8, and they passed it 6 times. 8 plus 6 is 14. One pick on a scramble. They also had a sack in those 6 passes. And the average distance here, which will throw you a little bit, right? They run more than they pass on 3rd down, but the average distance on 3rd down was over 7.5 yards. Their averaging was over 3rd and 7.5. And again, if analytics tell you that 3rd and 3 is kind of up to the coach and the culture, but 3rd and 4 needs to be a passing down. And truthfully, the numbers actually say 3rd and 3 is a passing down, yada, 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 right? Why are we running it 8 times on 3rd and an average of 7.5? That doesn't make any sense. It was only less than 5, only third and less than 5, 6 of those 14 times. Now, I was trying to figure out what was going on. Like, obviously, that means that you're not being very effective on first and second down. I think one of the things Willie Fritz said on Monday in his presser was that, there's nothing wrong with 2nd and 8. And as a football coach or former football coach to do basketball, just basketball now, I would agree that 2nd and 8 is a good down, right? However, I started saying, okay, what was the success rate of these? I was parsing things out, trying to pull data, assuming it would help make my point for me. Of the 8 runs on third down, Houston got the first 5 times. They got a first down 5 times. Of the 6 passes they threw on third down, they got a first 0 times. You heard that correctly. 0 first down passes complete. 0 passes completed on third down that resulted in a first down. And that, I guess, is why you could argue that they did run it. Now, there was some truly, questionable or just flat bad calls there too, or it's 3rd and 12 and they're running an inside zone, or there was one that felt like in the late fourth they threw in the towel. They ran Parker Jenkins on I believe there was a puller, so I'm going to call it more of a counter play, but it was definitely a gap scheme on 3rd and 15. That's just silly. That's wasting clock, throwing the towel. Let's get on the bus and go home. And that's disheartening as well. And I think in this game, there were the 3rd and 3s, the 3rd and 4s. Again, 6 of those 14 third downs were 5 yards or less. That they did result in Donovan Smith getting the first down, Zeon getting the first down, running, etc. Right. On the whole, though, and this is going to take them watching their film, figuring out what they're trying to do, and watch that all 22 view. But it does feel like you should have gotten a first down passing the football on third down, at least one of the 6. Admittedly, they didn't complete a whole lot of footballs on Saturday, but on the whole, you would think you could get a 3rd and 5 speed out that you clear out the top side with the spout fade like most people would do. Or you would think that, one of those HB angle routes, I think that announcers on TV called it a Texas route, but it's just an angle. The guy goes outside the tackle and then back in towards the middle. You would have thought you could complete one of those for a first down. Those are, generally pretty simple completions. Houston couldn't. And, there was one time, I'd call it player error, where Smith wheeled back to throw the angle route and he kind of mistimed it with Sanford and I think it was Sanford, it might have been Jenkins, got him killed. It might have even been Stacey's knee, right? Got him killed. There was one time they ran more of an outside concept with Boogie and it got him lit up as well. So some of that you could say is player execution, but some of that's also gotta be play calling and getting guys open. Typically you're gonna see stick coverage or stuff where people are in line to make sure you don't get a first down. You gotta do some sort of a crosser or something to find space in the zone. You gotta have one side zone killer, one side man killer, or whatever simplistic version of that would be. That is a simplistic version of that, I guess. There's something more complicated, I'm sure. But on the whole, you've got to be able to complete a ball on third down that gets you a first down. You're only leaving yourself running the ball, and you can't. At this point with this offense, you cannot guarantee you're going to be at 3rd and 4 or better. As unfortunate as that is, there will be a play where you move backwards on a hold or a false start or an incomplete pass or a missed block. And you just can't guarantee you're going to get to 3rd and 4. If you're having 3 yards of play, you're going to be at 3rd and 4 or better every single play, right? That's the thought. Every single series, I should say. And that's just not where this offense is. And so I guess that's why the numbers indicate that they run the ball so much on third down. It's the only thing they've having any success with. But then the next level of questioning has to be why? Why is that? Why can't Houston figure out other ways to be successful on third down? And I know I can always see the comment, I can see you typing, stop it, blaming the guy throwing it. And that's fair. Again, as Willie Fritz himself said, sometimes the quarterback gets too much praise when things are going well. And this may be a time where they're getting too much blame when things are not, because I feel like there are other things happening preventing Houston from being successful on third down. Now, I want to talk a little bit about conference realignment and kind of how that's been going on. We've been alluding to this throughout the episode, but a lot of news came out on Monday regarding this, implying that people have been talking over the weekend and stuff like that. But before we get too far into that, I do got to tell you about what's going on at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and oh so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's all right there. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Right now at FanDuel, Houston is a 13.5-point underdog against Iowa State. Just wanted to double check that line. But if you think that Houston can keep that closer than that, and I think they can, I'll tell you by Friday, I'm going to talk myself into them winning. Go to FanDuel.com today to check that out. That's FanDuel.com. All right, lots going on in the Pac-12, and I promise this will come back around to Houston at the end. But last week, the Pac-12 went on and added 4 schools to Oregon State and Washington State. That's Boise, Colorado State, Fresno, and San Diego State. They added those 4 to the Pac-12. They're up to the Pac-6. They got to get to 8 by 2026 to officially be an FBS conference. And their thought in doing that was they extended offers to Memphis, Tulane, UTSA, and USF, All American Athletic Conference schools, all of which rejected the offer. Yes, Memphis, Tulane, UTSA, and USF rejected the offer to leave the American Athletic Conference to go join the Pac-12. Seems significant. And frankly, to any semblance of the Pac-12 becoming a power conference, feels relevant that schools are turning them down because they don't think they'll make the money in the buyout or whatever. Each school is a little different in that, right? But turning down the Pac-12, turning down a formerly power conference, staying the American, tells you a lot. The other player in this whole thing was there was a rumor that Gonzaga was going to join the Pac-12. Obviously, in just basketball, they haven't played football since 1946. It does not look like that's going to happen. However, the 80s and presidents of the 4 American Athletic Conference schools did all confirm, and then the American Athletic Conference put out a big commitment thing saying that they're all staying. But there was confirmation to Dellinger of Yahoo Sports that those 4 schools did hear an offer from the Pac-12. Dellinger was the first to say that the Gonzaga AD is saying that the reporting is inaccurate, that they have not at Gonzaga committed to the Pac-12 as of Monday evening. It sounds like the Pac-12 then extended offers and sales and through their pitch to Air Force. Air Force said they're not leaving the Mountain West. There were rumors last week about Air Force joining the American Athletic Conference, so maybe there's something in the works there. The Pac-12 still has to get to 8 football schools. They need 2 more by 2026. Feels like they're on the lookout for that where they can get it. Dellinger reported that Utah State is going to accept their offer conditionally. It looks like if they get to 8 schools, Utah State will be one of the 8. So they're like a conditional 7th. Theoretically, they got to get to 8. And then the funniest part of this whole thing, UConn, the football program that everyone on my comment section was trying to tell me was not good enough for to play in the Big 12 and that Houston should never take. UConn is going to get a football-only offer, apparently, to the Pac-12. And it may accept it, depending on what the terms are and stuff like that, right? Interesting, because here's the deal is that is essentially taking an East Coast school out west to join the Pac-12 in football purely to make sure it can legitimately be a conference, right? Now, it does seem like there's smoke and fire around Gonzaga potentially signing up as a basketball school once this is an official conference. That does feel like a potential thing that could happen because there's just too much smoke around this rumor. And there were, with the quotes from the Gonzaga AD were things like, that's inaccurate. That hasn't happened yet. There were things like that around it. So it sounds like it's not out of question necessarily, but it's also not happening. And so if they could get those two football schools, you may get Gonzaga. So you'd have Gonzaga only in basketball and UConn only in football. UConn's been independent of football for a while now, right? So it's interesting to see all this movement happen in the Pac-12. But Parker, how's that tied to the Big 12? How's that tied to Houston? Well, it feels fairly obvious that this means there are officially only 4 power conferences. Last week, when the Pac-12 was looking like it was getting revived, there was questions about, okay, who can they add to make that conference a true power conference and not just a good group of 6 or 5 conference, right? And that would interestingly kind of involve itself in TV revenues and things like that, and college football playoffs, and that would also tie into TV revenues and all of those kinds of things, right? But if the Pac-12 is getting turned down by American Athletic Conference schools, if the Pac-12 is taking on UConn football without UConn basketball, if the Pac-12 is resorting to conditional yeses from Utah State, it feels easy to say that that conference is not a power conference. It's just not going to be. Even with Washington State and Oregon State having histories of being powerful football and powerful athletic programs in that region, they're just not going to be. It's going to be a really good group conference, but it's not a power conference. And that for the Big 12 is a good thing. That's a concrete thing. That's a Houston made the right decision in accepting their Big 12 offer thing, even with UT and Oklahoma leaving the conference, right? Clearly, that was the right call, because if Houston had not done that, or if Houston had not gotten that call, they probably would be stuck in this very same mess that Memphis and Tulane and UTSA find themselves in, right? And instead, they sit fairly comfortably in the Big 12, which I should point out also had a deal struck on Monday to get another. They are now basketball games are going to also be on CBS. It is the only of the 4 power conferences. I guess 5 in basketball when you count the Big East. The only of the 5 power basketball conferences to have basketball games on all 3 major networks: CBS, ESPN, and Fox. And that's also important as far as this whole dollars and cents things go. It was a good day for Houston in the Big 12, in that it kind of confirmed a lot of things are going the way they ought to go. And I think that while the chaos of who's in, who's out, who's in the Pac-12 dominated the circle and dominated the news cycle, that overall Houston should feel good about the news that they got. If you think I'm crazy, you think I'm silly, if you think I just have no idea what I'm talking, tell me in the comments down below. Be happy to talk to you about it later. We're going to be breaking down things all week long, getting for Iowa State, a gigantic recruiting weekend for Houston basketball coming up as well. Lots of things going on with the Houston Cougars. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. We here each and every day. Locked On Cougars is going to recommend Locked On Big 12 for a second listen of the day. And Locked On Cougars is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. There's your team every day. Go Cougs.